this meeting before we get fully started. Thank you for joining us today. We have got a really great session planned for you today. Kortni Blalock from our center is going to be talking a little bit about business licenses and sales tax at the farmers market. Before she does, though, I am going to take a second to talk a little bit about our center, what we do as extension specialists, and kind of hopefully give Kortni a little bit of a lead in. So, like I said, my name is Mooneyham. I've been with the center since February of 2025, so a little over a year now. And our mission is to help farmers who are looking to, I'll come back to that in just a sec. Our mission is to help farmers who are looking to develop value-added enterprises. And in the intake registration for this webinar, I asked you if you're already doing value-added ag, what you are doing, and if you're not, what you might be interested in. And we had a lot of folks say that they were interested in value-added but not doing it yet. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how we can help with that, help brainstorm ideas, and then why you might be interested in making the leap into value-added if you have not yet. So something that our center can do for you is we provide one-on-one technical assistance to folks every day throughout all different kinds of agriculture, from very small urban farming to larger operations such as dairy. We provide most educational programs and resources, one of those being this program. And our website has a ton of resources on it, including recorded webinars from past years, publications, and stuff from our partner organizations. So why should you consider value-added ag? So value-added entails changing a raw product into something new. So this can be through a lot of different things. Some things that I've got up here: cottage bakeries and Food Freedom Act, cottage foods, canning, cut flowers, agritourism, dairy products, anything that you can think of taking a raw ag product that you have and turning it into something new. So why might you want to do that? Value-added is a great opportunity to increase your farm's financial returns. So removing the middleman from the supply chain, so you are all of the marketing channels from start to finish until the product ends up in the consumer's hand. There's a lot of leverage for demand for fresh local products and experiences. The willingness to pay for local products is a huge, huge deal. Products that may go to waste or have short shelf life are going to be a great opportunity, so especially in fresh fruits and vegetables. And you can also market in smaller quantities. This is great for product development. This is a really great opportunity for that. Trying new things, seeing what works. So if you have been to a session with our center before, you've probably seen this little graphic. So this portion of the food dollar, 15.9 cents, is typically through traditional ag that goes back to the farm for the sale of raw commodities through traditional farming. The marketing share of the food dollar is this giant portion. So by engaging in value-added agriculture, you have the opportunity to capture the entire consumer dollar instead of just this small share. So why does this matter? Why could you want to do value-added? Again, multiply your income, creating year-round revenue, so especially, again, like I said, with fruits and veg, preserving seasonal abundance for off-season sales, building customer relationships, direct sales, mean better margins and loyal customers, utilizing waste, so turning coals and seconds into profitable products. Maybe a tomato is not picture perfect and good to sell at a farmer's market. You can include a value added product like a salsa instead. Some ways to stand out in the market are including value added in with other products that you're already doing. So including some of those value added products in with your current selection. So different commodities, different versions, different recipes, things like that. So here's some ways, some marketing channels that we utilize a lot in value-added agriculture. So sales direct to consumers, and this can be through so many different avenues, via farmers markets, via online sales, roadside stands, pick your own, agritourism like I've got down here. You can also sell your value-added products to some retail establishments, institutions, food hubs. Rules on that get to be a little bit specific based on product, and we are more than happy in the center to help guide you through what that looks like and who your marketing channel might benefit best from. So I like to bring this up because I am a business economic background by nature, and so what I care a lot about is the dollars and why this might be financially beneficial for you. So this is from the 2022 Ag Census. This is some value-added avenues that we typically see. The value of food directly sold to consumers or through whichever one of these avenues, and the number of farms in Tennessee that were currently at that time partaking in this value-added space. So you can see we have got just massive amounts of revenue being generated by value-added in Tennessee, and on average for each farm, some of these numbers are crazy, especially if you go into account that value added for some folks is not their primary revenue stream. A lot of folks do value added in addition to traditional farming. So think of this as an addition to maybe what you're already doing. So again, how can we help you with this if this has piqued your interest? Please feel free to reach out to us. I'm going to leave my contact information in the chat in a few minutes, and we're more than happy to work with you one-on-one through the whole every step of the process, from the brainstorming to the business specifics to marketing, which is a lot of what I do. Getting you in touch with the right people, so people in maybe the food science department at Tennessee, to get your products, safe and ready water activity wise. And we're just here to help you in any way that we can. So with that, I am going to begin to segue over to Kortni. So Kortni Blalock is an extension specialist in our center. She's been with the center since July of last year. And one of her main focus areas is business licenses and sales tax. Kortni is extremely knowledgeable about this topic. And so we are so thankful for her to be here today and to share with us a little bit about it. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A box. And yeah, thank you, Kortni.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone can hear me and see the screen.
Yes, we can hear you. Maybe speak a little louder if you can, but we can see the screen.
Ready? So I'm just gonna try and speak a little bit louder. Great. So, hi everyone. My name is Kortni Blalock, and today we're going to be going over business licenses and sales tax considerations. Again, I'm an extension specialist who specializes or has a focus in value-added enterprise management, and I work here at the Center for Profitable Agriculture. All right, so just a little bit about my background. So I'm originally from Georgia, but I got my bachelor's degree in agribusiness from North Carolina A&T State University. And then I got my master's at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville in agricultural and resource economics. And I started with the center back in July of 2025. So, but first, just going over the beginnings of the presentation. This presentation is for educational purposes. So this presentation is going to help with interpreting the sales and use tax manual and the Tennessee Agricultural Tax Manual from the Tennessee Department of Revenue. I've been working on this presentation for a couple of months, and I've been able to work side by side with the Tennessee Department of Revenue and reaching out to them for any questions that I have. So this is just for educational purposes, and does not constitute legal advice, nor is it intended to be a substitute for the services of a competent legal professional. And I'm here as an educator as we all walk through this together. So our session objectives, so this is going to be for farmers and others in the agricultural field who are engaged in direct marketing, value-added agriculture, and agritourism. And this is going to help make complex, confusing, and unique farmer situations more straightforward. So just a quick overview. So we have the purpose, and then we're going to be going over what I call BLAST questions, which just stands for business licenses and sales tax. And those are going to be scattered throughout just to help with the understanding of the content. And then we're going over business licenses, business tax, sales tax, and then any questions at the very end or reaching out. So the purpose of this presentation is that it's important for farmers to understand if they need a business license, how sales tax rules apply to them, any potential exemptions, the appropriate certificates, and any additional reference resources. And so starting off with business licenses. So a business license is a legal document that allows a business to operate in a specific geographic location. And businesses that are required to have a license must obtain a license for each county and municipality if required by the city for each business location. So if I were to have a setup or a store that's set up in Nashville, Tennessee, then I may be required to have both a business license for Nashville, but then also one for Davidson County as well. And then if I wanted to open up another store or farm stand down in Columbia, Tennessee, that will require a different business license because it is based on specific geographic location. And then all 95 counties require business licenses. So a license is required for any business whose profit has gross annual sales of more than $3,000 in a business location. And your fiscal year end is the same year end that's used by the IRS, which is normally in December. And then if a business is required to have a business license, it must be displayed at the business location. And so we're just looking at the different types of business licenses. There's the minimal activity business license and then the standard business license. So for a minimal activity license, that's when your gross annual sales are over $3,000 and less than $100,000. It's going to be $15 per location and no business tax will need to be paid. Then we have the standard business license, which is when your gross annual sales are $100,000 or more. It's $15 per location, and you will have to pay business tax for that. And the business licenses can be picked up at the county clerk. So going more into the exemptions now. So we see that you will not need a business license or business tax for a farm's sale of its farm-raised products. So if you raise cabbage and then you are the one to sell that cabbage, then you do not need a business license or to pay business tax. You also do not need a business license or to pay business tax for a farm's sale of value-added products, where the only ingredients are the farm-raised products, and the only non-raised ingredients are water, sugar, pectin, salt, and preservatives. So let's say you wanted to make a strawberry jam with strawberries that you grew. As long as you grew the strawberries and they only contain water, sugar, pectin, salt, or preservatives, then you do not need a business license or business tax. And then lastly here, you do not need a business license or business tax for a farm sale of admissions for tours or activities that are purely educational in nature. So this is no amusement or entertainment. And so going forward, looking kind of at the main differences between agritourism that's considered educational versus non-educational. So for educational, it has to be like bona fide, justifiable, and particularly educational. So just a farm tour that just shows you how the farm works. That's going to be more on just the purely educational side. And those, again, admission sales are not subject to a business license or business tax. Now for non-educational, that's going to be amusement, recreation, and entertainment. And so those are going to be subject to business licenses and business tax. And so as we move forward, these are the three main pillars that we're going to be looking at for business licenses, business tax, and sales tax. It's farm products, value-added ingredients. Again, those are the only ones that are allowed to be in the value-added ingredients in order to get the exemption. And then lastly, agritourism. So if your farm products are raised, the value-added ingredients contain, only those 5, and your agritourism is considered educational, and there's no limit on annual sales, then you do not need a business license or business tax. However, if your farm products are purchased, your value-added ingredients are more than those 5 exempt ingredients. So if you have a jam that includes more than just the water, sugar, pectin, preservatives, and salt, and then if your agritourism is considered non-educational, but your total annual sales are $3,000 or less, you still do not need a business license or a business tax. And it's all based on that $3,000 threshold. However, if you surpass that threshold and now your total annual sales are greater than $3,000, but less than $100,000, that's when you'll need the minimal activity business license, and you will not pay business tax. And the last threshold is if total annual sales are $100,000 or more, then you're going to need a standard activity business license and to pay business tax. And so those slides have kind of all just been summed up in this chart here. We have the farm sales category, so just breaking down again, the product was raised or purchased, the farm sale of its value-added products that contain only its raised products, and salt, water, sugar, pectin, or preservatives, and then whether an agritourism venture is considered educational or non-educational, and it lets you know again whether you need a business activity, whether you need a license at all, and whether it needs to be a minimal activity license or a standard business license. And so we're just going to move forward here with some examples. So we have Farmer Claire. Farmer Claire has tomatoes, corn, cucumbers, peaches, and strawberries that she raised, and now she sold them at her local farmer's market. Her annual sales total $11,000. Does she need a business license or to pay business tax? So we see that she raised them, and it's all based in a year. So it's all based on her annual sales, and they total $11,000. But she's not going to need a business license or to pay business tax because she raised them. She raised and she sold. Now we have Farmer Sophie. So Farmer Sophie raises pumpkins and makes pumpkin pies in a commercial kitchen on the farm to sell at her local farmers market. Sophie's annual pumpkin pie sales total $3,500. She uses the pumpkin she raised and eggs from her chickens, plus pastry, pumpkin pie spice, and sugar to make the pies. Does she need a business license or to pay business tax? So looking closer at Sophie, we see that she did raise her own pumpkins and her annual sales are $3,500. But we also see that she added in pastry, pumpkin pie spice, and sugar. So she's going to need a minimal activity business license. She's over the $3,000 threshold, and plus she added in those extra ingredients. So she's going to need a minimal activity business license, but she will not need to pay business tax. Now we have Farmer Jane. So Farmer Jane sells the tomatoes she raised for $6,000. She also purchases tomatoes from another farmer and sells them at her local farmer's market for $10,000. Her annual total sales are $16,000. She keeps accurate records of the sales of her raised versus her purchase profits. Does she need a business license or to pay business tax? So again, we see that she did raise some tomatoes, but she also purchases tomatoes from another farmer, and she was able to sell them for $10,000. So she is also going to need a minimal activity business license. It's also important to note that when we're considering the threshold, especially for the purchased products, we're focusing only on the $10,000 that came specifically from the purchased products. So she's going to need a minimal activity business license and not to pay business tax. Now we have Farmer Tom. So Farmer Tom has a pumpkin patch with a corn maze, slide, and other recreational activities. Within the year, he sells his raised pumpkins for $10,000. Tom then sells admission tickets to his agritourism operation for $60,000, food and drinks from his concession stand for $22,000, and t-shirts and apparel for $20,000. Does he need a business license or to pay business tax? So we see that he has a pumpkin patch, corn maze, slide. Those are all going to be considered non-educational. He did raise pumpkins. However, he sold tickets for $60,000, food and drinks for $22,000, and t-shirts and apparel for $20,000, which all add up to over $100,000, meaning he's going to need a standard business license. And he is also going to be required to pay business tax. And now we're looking at Farmer Isabella. So Farmer Isabella has a cow dairy and makes cheese from the milk. Salt, starter cultures, and rennet are added to the milk during the cheese making process. Farmer Isabella retails her cheese through her e-commerce site and farm store, and she wholesales her cheese products through a distributor. Her annual sales of cheese at retail are $40,000, and wholesale through a distributor are $250,000, for a total of $290,000. So as we can see, she does make cheese. She's adding in more than those 5 distinct ingredients. We see that she retails and wholesales, and we'll come back to that later. That's also important in terms of business tax. And we see again, she's over the $100,000 threshold, meaning that she's going to need a standard business license and required to pay business tax. So it's also important to go over the definition of the farmer who raised, as in the farmer who raised the products. So it can be the farmer themselves in a sole proprietorship, but the farmer who raised can also mean an entity. So if it's a partnership or LLC or any other form, as long as that entity is the one who raised the product. So the farmer who raised can look different. And so moving on more to business tax. So a business tax is a privilege tax that permits one to engage in the business of selling tangible personal property at wholesale or retail or rendering certain services. And then again, a business that has gross annual sales of $100,000 or more. So for business tax, it depends upon business classifications and subclassifications. The dominant business activity is going to determine the classification. And then again, it's going to vary whether whether the sales are made wholesale or retail. And then a minimum business tax of $22 for each business. And so looking here, this is originally on the Tennessee Department of Revenue, and it's just a very condensed version, but these are these are the classifications. So class 1A, class 1B, class 1C, and then there's more on the website, but it's just condensed here. It tells you what they're for, the description, and there's a difference between the retail rate and then the wholesale tax rate. And so for the sake of the examples today, we're going to be focusing on class 1A, which is for businesses. And the description, it's food and beer for home consumption. And then we can see the differences in the tax rates. And then we're also going to focus on class 3. So that's going to be services, businesses, and those that sell tangible personal property. And the description is delicatessens, pet food, candy, and bait. Again, there's more on the website. And then the differences between their retail rate and the wholesale rate. And also, it's important to know the difference between a retailer and a wholesaler. So for a retailer, at least 50% of the taxable gross sales are retail sales, meaning that on the other end, that for a wholesaler, at least 50% of taxable gross sales are wholesale. And so we're going to look back at that farmer Tom example. So he was the one who had the agritourism venture that had admission tickets for $60,000. They had the concession stand sales were $22,000, and then his apparel was $20,000 to all accumulate to being over that $100,000 threshold. So his dominant business activity is the sale of admissions that we see in deep blue, and that's going to be considered a service. Service was classification 3 for business services, and because it was retail, his retail rate is going to be the 0.001875. That's going to be applied to the amount. So that's his total profit, but it's total gross annual sales. And then the business tax rate and his business tax that he needs to pay is $191.25. So we also have another example of Farmer Isabella that I said we were coming back to. We saw specifically that she retails her cheese for $40,000 in that year. And then she also had wholesales of $250,000. So the dominant business activity is the sale of cheese. And her cheese is going to be considered a food product for home consumption, just class 1A. And so again, we're going to be taking, she's going to use the wholesale rate. And so this is supposed to be, again, her total gross annual sales, her business tax rate, and then we see that her business tax to be paid is the $72.50. So going on to another important question of when is business tax due? So it's due on the 15th day of the 4th month following the end of the business's fiscal year. So for example, if the business's fiscal year coincides with the calendar year, then the return will be due on April 15th. And again, a business's fiscal year end can be anytime, but this is just in terms of if it coincides with the calendar year. And then how is business tax paid? So businesses must file a business tax return and pay the tax electronically on the Tennessee Department of Revenue's website using the Tennessee Taxpayer Access Point. So we can see here, this is just a screenshot of the website of the Tennessee Department of Revenue. You see the Tennessee Taxpayer Access Point. You're able to log in and have the option to payments, return, registration, and much more within the system. to move on sales tax now. I see some Q&A, but I will move on from them until the end. So looking at the sales tax, I think it's very important to identify and explain sales tax rules, identify and explain any sales tax exemptions, describe when sales tax is due, sales tax rates, explain how to get registered and document tax exempt purchases, and then provide information about sales tax implications for value-added farm products and agritourism operations. So looking at the definition according to the Tennessee Department of Revenue, this is directly from their website. Sales and use taxes are transactional taxes applied to the sale or use of tangible personal property for specific services in Tennessee. And then sales tax generally applies to the retail sales of any business, organization, or the person engaged in making retail sales. And so we're just going to look at this combined sales tax rates for a second. So kind of just made this little decision tree. And so we're starting with the collecting sales tax. For this one, we're on the yes route. So you are going to collect sales tax. And then you have the local rate, which is going to be between 2.25% and 2.75%. And that's just based on your location. That information is also on the Tennessee Department of Revenue. And then the next question is going to be, is this a food or food ingredient? If yes, what you're selling is considered a food ingredient, then you're going to be paying the food rate, which is 4%, meaning that the highest combined rate that you can have for a product is 6.75% for on a sale. However, if what you're selling is not considered a food ingredient, which is the state rate of 7%, you're going to have to pay the state rate of 7%. And then your highest combined rate, sales tax rate, is going to be 9.75%. And so moving forward, I think it's pretty important to distinguish what is considered a food and food ingredient versus prepared food. Specifically on the Tennessee Department of Revenue, there's a difference between whether you'll be collecting or like utilizing the 4% or the 7%. And so for the food and food ingredient, that's defined as a liquid, concentrated, solid, frozen, dried, or dehydrated substances that are sold to be ingested or chewed by humans and are consumed for their taste or nutritional value. And then, so again, as stated, it's subject to only 4%, and this does not include alcoholic beverages, tobacco, candy, dietary supplements, or prepared food. And we'll get into prepared food in the next slide. But here's just a very short list. This isn't even all that's in the list that was provided by the Tennessee Department of Revenue. And then plus there's so many examples based on what everyone is uniquely doing. But here's just a very, very short and condensed list of what is considered a food and food ingredient. And at the very bottom, there is a link for you to be able to look at the full list. But here are just a few examples. However, now we're going to look at what prepared food. So prepared food is a food item that meets the following qualifications. So it is sold in a heated state or heated by the seller. It contains 2 or more ingredients mixed together by the seller for the sale as a single item, or a vendor who sells it also provides eating utensils such as plates, knives, forks, spoons, glasses, cups, napkins, or straws. And then, as we said, it says prepared food is not considered food or food ingredients for sales tax purposes, and they're going to be subject to the standard rate. And here is also just a short list as well. And then at the very bottom is the link to this definition as well, provided by the Tennessee Department of Revenue. And so I definitely recommend looking at both the food and food ingredient list and the prepared food list to understand what your product qualifies as. And so moving forward with sales tax, looking at the exemptions. So if a farmer raised the product, then they are exempt from sales tax. Again, this is for livestock products, nursery stock, poultry products, grains, fruits, and vegetables. And And then this is regardless of the purchaser or location. So whether that's at a farmer's market or online or on farm. Again, for this, there is no paperwork, registration, or approval needed, but in an instance, you should be able to provide proof that the products do meet the criteria if asked, if necessary. And then again, there is no annual sales limit. So just jumping into a quick example, we have Farmer Jill. She raises 1,000 strawberries and sells them to consumers for $8 each for a total of $8,000. It's the sale of the farm products subject to sales tax. Again, she raised them, so no sales tax. And now we have another exemption called the 50% exemption threshold. And so here we see the two different pie charts. And looking at the left, we see that if the sale of raised products exceeds 50% of total annual sales, then no sales tax is collected. So moving at this side, we see that the dark blue is farm raised. So because the farm raised exceeds that 50% threshold over purchased products, then no sales tax is collected at all. But here on the opposite end, we see that if the sale of purchased products exceeds 50% of total annual sales, then sales tax is collected on the purchased products only. So on the opposing end, we see that this lighter blue is the purchased products for sale. And we see that it exceeds that 50% threshold over the farm raised products, meaning that you're only going to collect sales tax on the purchased products. And we'll look into some examples. Again, this goes back to whether you're a sole proprietorship or you have an entity, and then whether you're using a broker as well. So if an entity is selling a product that it did not raise, then the products are subject to sales tax. And if a buyer buys a product to sell from a broker and not the farmer who raised the product, then the product is subject to sales tax. And so just some examples. So in the same calendar year, Farmer Greg raises and sells peppers for $8,000. He also sells peppers to consumers for $5,000 that were bought for resale from the farmer who raised them. Farmer Greg's pepper sales totaled $13,000. Does sales tax need to be collected? So we see he raised and sold some, also bought some for resale from the farmer who raised them. So looking down here at his chart, we see that the dark blue are his raised peppers and the lighter blue are his purchase. We see that his raised peppers exceed that 50% threshold, meaning that no, he's not going to have to collect sales tax on any of it. So moving on to another example, we still have Farmer Greg, who's raising and selling peppers. He raised and sold peppers for $8,000. This time, he also sold peppers to consumers for $10,000 that were bought for resale from the farmer who raised them. Now his pepper sales total $18,000. Does sales tax need to be collected? So now looking at this chart, we see that his purchased peppers, that lighter blue, exceeds that 50% threshold. So that means, yes, he's going to need to collect sales tax, but on the purchased peppers only. For his raised peppers, he's not going to have to because he raised them and sold them. He doesn't need to collect sales tax on those. But due to the purchased peppers exceeding this 50% threshold, he's going to have to collect sales tax from the purchased peppers. And moving forward again, we have again in the same calendar year, Farmer Greg raises and sells peppers for $8,000. He purchases peppers from a broker and resells them to consumers for $7,000. Does sales tax need to be collected? So when we see down here at the chart, well, we see that the raised peppers exceed that 50% threshold. However, as we see in the red, he purchased them from a broker and not the farmer who raised them, meaning, yes, he's going to need to collect sales tax on the purchase peppers because he got the purchase peppers from a broker. And so looking once again at the combined sales tax rate, and going down the track of, yes, we're collecting sales tax, and combining the local rate and whether you split off to the food rate or the state rate. Just a quick example and just a pretty kind of simplified example just to see it. We have farmer A lives in Lebanon, Tennessee, and just sold $100 worth of taxable food products. The local food tax is the local food tax, state tax is 2.75%, and the state food tax is 4%. How much will a consumer pay with taxes? So that first tax is just the local tax in Lebanon, Tennessee, and that second tax is the food tax. So we're going to take the local food tax and the state food tax in their decimal forms and add them to get the combined tax on the food product. We're then going to take the original food sale, multiply it to the combined tax of the food product, and to get the total tax on the food product. Then take the original sale, add it to the food product, and we have the final sale, which is going to be $106.75. And then below is just a chart just to see the additions of the local sales tax and the state food tax. And now we're going to look at some more exemptions. So a business or a farmer is not required to have a sales tax account or collect sales tax if their annual gross sales are $4,800 or less, or taxable services are above $1,200 per year, and the seller pays Tennessee sales tax to a supplier for everything. And so in this scenario, it has to be both of them. Is this not an and or? So you would not have to collect sales tax if the annual gross sales are $4,800 or less, and you pay Tennessee sales tax to your suppliers for everything. And we'll also look at some examples. And so this is still the same in considering that for the value added, you still only need the water, sugar, pectin, salt, or preservatives, and then still distinguishing between the educational and non-educational. And so here we have Farmer Manny. So Farmer Manny raises and sells oranges for $3,000, and the oranges he purchased from another farmer sold to consumers for $4,000. He paid sales tax to the supplier, and total sales are $7,000. Does sales tax need to be collected? So here we see that he raises and sells oranges. However, he purchased some from another farmer to sell to consumers as well. And we see that he paid sales tax to the supplier. And then even though we see that the purchased products exceed the raised products, we see that no, he's not going to need to collect sales tax because he paid sales tax to the supplier and his purchased product sales were less than $4,800. Again, when we're looking at purchase, we look at specifically like what the purchase sales are. Because again, for anything that Manny raises and sells, again, he's not going to need to collect sales tax. So it's only based on the sales of the purchase, which is less than the $4,800, and then he paid the sales tax to the supplier. So he does not need to collect sales tax. Now we're moving on to a different example. We have Farmer Sophie, who raises pumpkins and makes pumpkin pies in her commercial kitchen. Sophie from all the way in the beginning. Sophie's annual pumpkin pie sales total $3,500. She uses the pumpkin she raised and eggs from her chickens, plus pastry, pumpkin pie spice, and sugar to make the pies. She pays sales tax to the supplier for her value-added ingredients. Does she need to collect sales tax? Again, she raises them, and her pumpkin pie sales totaled at $3,500. She paid sales tax to the supplier. So again, in the beginning of the presentation, we saw that she needed a minimal activity business license and not to pay business tax. And in this specific scenario, she's also not going to collect sales tax on the sale of her pumpkin pies because she's under that $4,800 threshold and she paid sales tax to the supplier. And now we have a different example. So Farmer Daisy grows pumpkins on her farm. She starts 2 agritourism ventures. So she's offering a hayride through the pumpkin patch and allowing consumers to pick their own pumpkin. So if an $8 admission is charged per person for the hayride and 1 pumpkin, does she need to collect sales tax? So let's see, she grows her own pumpkins. And we see she has 2 ventures, the hayride and the pumpkin. But yes, she is going to need to collect sales tax because that agritourism activity and the farm raised product are combined on the same admission ticket. And so there are different scenarios that she can choose between. So as we saw, she had the farmer raised product, the non-educational farm activity on the same ticket, meaning that she needs to collect sales tax on all of it. However, she also has the option to separate the tickets and have just the farm raised product, which will have no collection of sales tax, and then the non-educational farm activity, which will collect the sales tax. And so moving forward and also looking forward at the application for sales tax registration. So it's going to be on the same website as before, the Tennessee Taxpayer Access Point that's provided by the Tennessee Department of Revenue. You can apply for the certificate of registration, where you will also get the certificate of resale, which is to not pay sales tax for products that you're going to turn around and resell. And then also you have the option to also apply for the agricultural sales and use tax certificate of exemption. So that one is not for resale, but it's for when you want to purchase, or let's say if you did want to make a value added a strawberry jam, you could use the agricultural sales and use tax certificate of exemption to purchase the jars sales tax free and to purchase the labels sales tax free. So that's what that second one is about, that certificate of exemption is about. So moving forward, I also wanted to look at some frequently asked questions that I've been getting during these presentations. And so one of them is here. So determining whether a farmer needs a business license or should collect sales tax is based on a year. However, there can be events such as weather, pests that can affect annual projections. So what happens in that scenario? So here we have a quick example. So farmer Eric projects that he will sell more of his farm-raised products than purchased products in an annual year. So he plans to meet that 50% exemption threshold. However, so between January and July, he was not collecting sales tax from consumers. However, mid-year, he lost some of his farm-raised products to weather and needs to supplement more with his purchased products. He now loses the 50% exemption status and will need to collect sales tax. Does he still need to remit sales tax from the previously purchased products from the time period of January to July? So in this scenario, the Tennessee Department of Revenue would not make the farmer go back or, hunt down customers to collect that sales tax or have to remit that tax. If the situation changes, the TDR would just expect them to collect sales tax from that point forward. Another question that I get is about consignment sales and kind of what happens in scenarios of consignment. So in the scenario, we have Farmer Bob, who is selling unadulterated beef in a local farm store where they consign the meats for sale directly to the public. So the store owner does not purchase the meat from the farmer first for resale. The store owner charges Farmer Bob a consignment fee when the meat sells. So will sales tax still be collected because Farmer Bob did grow the products? However, it's being sold through consignment. So in this scenario, this consignment scenario, the party who actually makes the sale to the end customer is considered the dealer and is responsible for collecting and remitting sales tax. So the store owner should be the one to collect the sales tax on the goods. And so moving forward, just to summarize all of this information. So in this scenario, if you have your farm-raised products, you have value-added ingredients that include your farm-raised products and only those 5 exempt ingredients, or an educational agritourism at any sales, you do not need a business license or business tax. If you have purchased products that are more than or value-added products that contain more than the 5 exempt ingredients, or a non-educational agritourism, but your annual sales are $3,000 or less, you still do not need a business license or business tax. If you still have that same scenario, but your annual sales are more than $3,000, but less than $100,000, then you just need a minimal activity business license and are not required to pay business tax. And if you still have the same scenario, but your annual sales are $100,000 or more, that's when you just need a standard business license and you're required to pay business tax. And so in terms of for sales tax, if you have the scenario of your farmer raised products, the 5 exempt ingredients, or an educational agritourism, at any annual sales, you do not collect sales tax. However, for all other products, if your annual sales are $4,800 or less, and as long as the buyer has paid sales tax for their purchases, then again, you do not collect sales tax. However, if you're over that $4,800 threshold, then you're going to collect sales tax. So here are the sources. They're all from the Tennessee Department of Revenue. Again, I definitely recommend looking into the Tennessee Agricultural Tax Manual. It's very long, but it has a lot of great information in there and great examples of different scenarios. And then there's the local sales tax rate, so you know what your sales tax rate is for your area. There's also a link for any exemption certificates and credits. And then lastly, there's the link for the sales tax on food and food ingredients to be able to know what's on the list and what they consider food and food ingredient versus prepared food. And then sources. So this has been a lot of information, but it is recorded. We have a series on YouTube called Daring to Learn, where I was able to also talk about business licenses and sales tax in case you want to go back and watch. And also this is being recorded as well. So you can go back and watch and look at the resources and the examples again. Here's a contact for the Tennessee Department of Revenue if you have any questions and you want to reach out to them directly. And here's their email, their website, their phone number. And then here's our information for our center. So our website, our email, phone number, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And then here's my information if you want to reach out to me directly with any questions that you have. And then if it's a very complex scenario and we together reach out to the Tennessee Department of Revenue, here's my information. Here you see my direct line and my email.
All right, Kortni, thank you so much. You have got some questions in the Q&A box. And while you are answering those, I think hopefully some folks will have gotten their questions answered. I know I saw a few, but I am going to share the evaluation link. So if you are interested in getting credit for the TAEP application B, whoops, sorry, that's totally on me. If you're interested in getting any education credit for TAEP, go ahead and fill out this survey link, so that'll give us a good guess or a good attendance list. And I just also dropped the link in the chat if that is needed. Okay, sorry, Kortni, I'm done talking now.
Very good. So the first question that I have here, it says, if we are selling digital products in conjunction with our farm product items, do we still need a business license? So if the digital products, I'm not sure if that's also still farm related or agricultural related, then I would just say it's still based on that annual year. And they'll determine what you're selling. So I would definitely recommend reaching out to me more so I can learn a little bit more about what you're selling. Then I see where it says that someone's county clerk office told them that they need a business license if our sales exceed $100,000. So yes, so in terms of if you do exceed that $100,000 threshold, that's when you'll need the standard business license. But there is also the threshold of more than $3,000 and less than $100,000, which is the minimal activity business license. And so those are the two that will your category will fall into. Then I also received a question saying that if we want to accept SNAP benefits, will we also need a business license? So I am not up on information for SNAP benefits when coming to a business license. So I do recommend reaching out directly to the Tennessee Department of Revenue for that question. And then I see some of these kind of come together where I see if this is our first year, should we go ahead and get our business license? And then another, how do we know whether we will need to pay sales tax if based on annual sales? So again, that is kind of just based on projections and what you are growing and what you expect to grow. And you'll be able to, or is your first year, but just what you expect to grow and what you expect to sell in terms and be able to find the balance mainly between if it's going to be over 3,000 or less than 3,000. And then I see another question, is the 3,000 in sales limit per year? And yes, it's based on the year. And then I see a question that says, hey, is a business license and tax exempt the same? And will a business license help with taxes? So I'm not 100% certain on will the business license help with taxes, but will the business license and taxes the same? You'll be able to, as we said, it's all based on those thresholds. So if you fit those thresholds of being less than 3,000, then you do not have to pay that business tax. And if you're less than the $100,000, then you don't have to pay, or you're not required to pay that business tax either. So it's just based on which categories you fall into, whether you don't need a business license or which kind of business license you need. And that's all the main questions that I see.
And I am going to answer this question from Jennifer. It says, all sessions geared toward just value-added producers? They are a food trailer that wants to sell at farmers market. And will we have any sessions on that? Yes, we will. There will be a session later in the series. It is called Farmers Market Food Unit. And that is a presentation by the Tennessee Department of Health, Mel Haas, who is very, very knowledgeable on the fact. So come back for more. And the date on that is an excellent question that I don't have up at the moment. So give me like 2 seconds and I will find it for you. Let's see. Also, and Kortni, I was trying to answer or to type what you were saying to some of those folks. I hope that came through. So the session for farmers market food units is on April the 20th. And I'm just going to go ahead and leave what we've got, our current. This is our current schedule. Just so you can see there, this would be helpful if you're doing a farmers market food unit, so food that's meant to be consumed on site. Record keeping, and then additionally e-commerce next week with Elena Boyd. I'm going to go ahead and stick this back up here. And oops. If we have any, okay, we've actually got a lot more questions, Kortni. I will answer one of where can we find the recorded session. So the sessions will be on the Center for Profitable Agriculture's YouTube page. So if you go on YouTube and search Center for Profitable Agriculture, it'll come right up. I will also, all of these sessions are being recorded, so we will get those uploaded to YouTube as soon as possible, and I will go ahead and send an email out to all of the registrants, just to give you a heads up that it's on the YouTube channel.
And I also see a question that's based on franchise tax and another one that's based on the Schedule F. So when it comes to those specifics, I do recommend reaching out to the Tennessee Department of Revenue. And that's all the questions that I see. Oh, wait, I also see one says where to get a business license. That's going to be with your county clerk.
So, I have got one question from Linda, and I am gonna answer this as I think you've asked, is how to register for the boot camp. And so that would be to go to this link that I am typing in the chat right here to make sure that you are on our email list. And let's see. And if not, just let me know if that did not answer your question and we can get it answered.
That's not but thank you guys for listening.
Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Come right on back this time next week, and we will have some more goodness from another specialist in our center, Elena Boyd, to talk about e-commerce essentials. If you are looking to get TAEP credits and have not filled out this evaluation form already, please do so. And if you have a question today that did not get answered, it was completely accidental, but if I accidentally overlooked something, please send me an email. My email is emooneyh@utk.edu, and I will do everything in my power to get it answered. But thank you for being here. And we will hang out for a few more minutes, but consider yourselves free to go. Enjoy your lunch, and we'll see you next week.